Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the table from me.
What's up? What's up? My name is Ayman.
Ayman, yeah, repeat guest. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. It's awesome to see. This is an incredible setup that you've got here. I see you've upgraded. Your voice is now even like radio quality. I mean, this is really nice. I'm excited to be here.
I got to do everything I can to not sound like Kermit the Frog. So,
are you still getting those comments?
On YouTube, I'll get it. Like the whole Muppet or Kermit the Frog. Ray Romano is the other one I get. So
just a bunch of haters.
Well, it's just preparing me for my second career as a Ray Romano backup. Poor man's Ray Romano.
I always saw you as like a potential like game show host in the future.
Oh yeah,
yeah, maybe like a supermarket sweep or what was that ones we Olmec, the Hidden Temples.
Oh yeah,
you remember that
on
one?
Nickelodeon?
No, that was a great one. That was one of my bucket list items was to be on that game show. I'm so bummed that it went away.
Yeah, I'll have to watch the old shows on YouTube.
Yeah,
bring back some good memories
for sure.
It's been a long time since you've been on a show. I think it's probably been like 3 years or 4 years.
That's crazy. It's been 3 years.
Yeah.
It feels like 3 months.
I know. Certainly something has happened in the past 3 years.
I think last time we were discussing the rise at AppSumo. And since then, actually, as of last year, I stepped down as the CEO of AppSumo. So that's obviously some pretty big news.
Yeah. Well, AppSumo continued to just, from my perspective, as an itty bitty e-commerce brand guy.
Yeah.
You blew that up. I mean, that's getting up into the 9 figures now, huh?
So when I took over, we were doing about $3 million in revenue. When I stepped down the year, we were doing $80 million in revenue and growing 80% year over year. And so, we're knocking on 9-figure territory right now, which is really exciting.
That rocket ship, man. That's
been
so
a lot
cool.
of fun. It was an amazing ride. It was super fun working with Noah, with the team. It was just a lot of fun getting into to where it's at right now. Just recognizing that, hey, as you're well aware, as the business doubles, every doubling is a completely new company and it requires a completely different CEO. And I was just recognizing as we approach 9 figures, hey, we're going to need to bring in an entirely different type of CEO in order to take us to the whole next level.
Yeah, I think, one of the best lessons or one of the most interesting insights I've gotten from you over our many meetings is kind of talking about hiring and how you would always just hire above, each round, you just kind of level up that hiring process.
Yeah.
Explain that again for our listeners, because I think I just butchered the whole basic concept of how you start to bring in this all-star talent.
Absolutely.
As your company continues to grow. Yeah.
So let's maybe take a step back and just walk through the levels of growth of how to get to even getting to 3 million is an incredibly difficult journey, and for the most part, I would put it as 3 major pillars to get to that point. Number one, who's your ideal client? I call that the person. Who is the person you're solving this problem for? And then what is the product? That's the second component that you're going to be able to deliver to them. And I think it's important to know who you're serving first and foremost, because if you release a product to solve a problem, that's the equivalent of writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. No one's going to care. No one's going to really give a shit. But if you know those 2 things, then you can go crazy on promotion. And so those 3 things, person, product, and promotion, will get you to mid-7 figures, depending on the type of business, whether e-commerce, SaaS, or service-based business. So once you get to mid-7 figures, that's where everything changes. And that's really where a lot of businesses reach a bottleneck where they're like, well, why isn't what we've been doing getting us to 8 figures and beyond? And the reason they're stalling out is first and foremost, it's a people problem. And so prior to the mid-7 figures, you're in product development mode. After mid-7 figures, you need to be in people development mode. And people development mode is, how do I get myself out of the business on a day-to-day basis? And I'll give you an example. When I first started at AppSumo, I would find myself like going on vacation and I'll be in Colombia and I'm like, I have 2 weeks and I'm hoping to enjoy myself. And I literally spent the entire vacation in the lobby of the hotel, just taking care of fire drills and answering customer support tickets. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And so what I ended up doing is analyzing, okay, what is actually taking up a lot of my time? Customer support was taking up some of my time. Some of the admin work, actually getting the deals live was taking up some of my time. Actually closing the deals for AppSumo was taking up some of my time. And so we started to build out a team that would address each of those elements. And so, we hired Chris Schelsey to handle the back end of AppSumo. We hired Ullman to start closing some of the deals. And slowly over time, I was able to start extracting myself from the day-to-day of the business. And sure enough, just a few short years later, I'm on Europe. I'm completely offline. The business is thriving. There's almost zero fire drills. And at the tail end of my journey at AppSumo, it was very rare for me to be sucked into any fire drills. And I was always working 2 to 3, not just quarters, but sometimes years on the business. So that way we're worrying about problems in the future rather than day-to-day problems.
Yeah, I want to, for our smaller brands and listeners out there with smaller businesses that are still getting ramped up.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big issue and the big concern, especially if you don't have a big team, is like the cash flows of employees. Obviously you can't hire a person in America for, less than $50,000.
Right.
And that could be, if a company's doing $1 million, that could be a really big chunk of that profitability.
Totally. Almost all of it, maybe.
Yeah. How do you know really like when you make that hire, and then how do you make sure that hire becomes productive and profitable?
Yeah, it's a great call out. And I would bring it back to what I call the test and invest framework, which is like, how can you do it in the cheapest way possible and prove the ROI? And I'll explain how I did it at AppSumo. So when I was looking at everything I was doing, and when I joined AppSumo, the entire team was focused on SumoMe at the time. I would be closing a deal on Monday, writing the copy on Tuesday, sending an email on Wednesday, doing customer support on Thursday, and doing prospecting and reaching out on Friday. And literally was doing that over and over again. And I was like, well, what is taking up a lot of my time that, quite frankly, I'm not really the best in the world at? And I was looking at the process, and I was spending a lot of time on setting up the actual deal. So after you close the deal, you'd go into the back end and actually be writing that HTML and getting all of that stuff ready to go, uploading the codes. And I was like, this is taking up maybe just as much time as it does to close a deal, but it doesn't really produce any money for the business. And quite frankly, I don't enjoy it. And so I looked at my network and I'm like, well, what can I do? And I actually hired an intern from UT Austin. I drafted up a quick job description. I reached out to the business group at UT Austin, and I'm like, the honors business group, I'm like, do you mind blasting this out? And I ended up hiring who ended up being the valedictorian at UT Austin for that year. And he ended up working for AppSumo for well over 6 months. And I was paying him $15 an hour out of pocket through Venmo. And he was working 10 hours a week, getting that stuff off my plate. So $150 a week, right? I don't care who you are. You could afford that if you're growing a growing business. And what he was able to do is he was able to clear up an entire day for me that I was then able to go and close more deals. And all of a sudden the business started adding 20 to 30% more revenue, which allowed me to make my first full-time hire. And so I would argue, look overseas, look to hiring part-time. There's a ton of places where you can be hiring moms that are looking to get back into the workforce. They're doing incredible work. There's a lot of VA services online. I think Marshall has Shepherd is an incredible one. And so you don't have to jump into hiring someone full-time at $50,000 to start to open up the plate on your calendar and start to prove out the ROI. I think you can do it with $150 a week and actually start seeing that ROI and using those profits to reinvest into even more future hires.
Yeah, I think the big lesson from that is, making sure that now that your time is freed up, you are doing more productive things.
Yes.
Because if you're not, if you're going to other non-profitable things for your business, you're essentially kind of digging a hole and filling up the other hole or something.
Exactly. And it's such an important skill to learn, especially if you're a bootstrap business. AppSumo is 100% bootstrapped, is that are you being strategic with your time? And so for us at AppSumo, we were recognizing that if I was able to double the amount of effort I put towards sales and closing better and higher quality deals, we immediately saw an uptick in our business. And you can do work like understanding your strategic flywheel. So Jim Collins has an incredible book about creating your own flywheel. If you understand your strategic flywheel, for us, when we have incredible deals, we can't help but bring in more customers, which can't help but bring in more profitability. And so my focus was, how do I stop doing non-high value work and focus on bringing more better, incredible deals? And we immediately saw that ROI build back into the business.
Another thing I wanted to add on is Dynamite Jobs is another resource that we used recently to look for, work remote people, which is very high demand. Like we historically would use the software Jazz, which would auto post to like Indeed and Monster and whatever, and we'd get a couple of candidates. And then on Dynamite Jobs, I think we got like 500 or 600
That's incredible.
candidates.
Yeah, I was just meeting with Dan and Ian yesterday talking about Dynamite Jobs. I mean, they got 60,000 ready to go, really high quality, pre-vetted candidates. And I mean, what they're doing over there is absolutely incredible. And I'm hearing a lot of people like yourself having a lot of success. I mean, there's so many incredible resources online. Once you're hitting that mid-7 figures, you really do need to transition to being a recruiter.
Yeah.
And like that needs to be your number one job, because if your habit is always to roll up your sleeves and do the work yourself, you are always going to be the bottleneck in the business. The second you start thinking of this as a who problem rather than a how problem is the second you start to actually open up the growth levers for the business.
Yeah. I wanted to continue talking about like turning those roles over. So clearly you were a great salesperson closing deals. How did you know when to turn that off as something that is very productive for the business and bring someone on to kind of replace that role? Was it just you got tired of it? You didn't want to do it, or?
You should constantly be slowly backing away from the business. And so as a CEO, you should be constantly getting to the point where you are no longer involved in the actual production of the profitability of the business. Because if you are forced to jump on sales calls, forced to be writing copy, you're not going to have the time to be able to focus on growing the actual business. And so this was a multi-year process. And, we hired Ullman, then we eventually hired Jeff, and the two of them have been able to build out an incredible sales team for AppSumo. In the interim, I was maybe closing 3 deals a week, and then eventually 2 deals a week, and then 1 deal. Like growing a business is kind of like parenting. Like as the baby grows, you want to be slowly backing away. And eventually, hopefully by the time the business goes off to college, you're no longer needing to be there. And the same thing with growing a business. You want it to be a slow transition away. And hopefully the people you're hiring and cultivating can do a better job. And Ullman and Jeff are way better salespeople than I ever was. And that was a direct result of them continuing to get better and better at their craft and being able to go out and improve their craft and being fully dedicated, and it allowed me to focus on other things in the business.
How do you maintain that patience? I think like leadership, you tend to see the future and you just want to bring it all in. And by the end of it, you're working on projects that are like 2 or 3 years long.
Right.
Like, how do you have that patience where it's like, oh my God, I want what we need to do in 2 years done today?
Right. Well, I mean, like how long did Beer Brand take to get off the ground?
I mean, like 2 days, something like that. Just get a Shopify template and kind of a promise from a vendor to.
Right.
It was no time.
So,
but that was off the ground, right?
That's off the ground. Like how long did it take before like the product was where you were happy with it?
Well, we didn't launch our first product until May, so we were a retailer.
Okay.
Up to that point, and then we're still evolving our product. Like we're still.
It's a constant evolution, and so I think that like a lot of times founders go with product development, and you can get an MVP off the ground. In fact, you should get an MVP off the ground within 1-2 days, similar to hiring an intern within 1-2 days. But to expect that person is going to be performing the way you want them to perform within 1-2 days, I think is naive. I think you have to constantly be thinking about how do I continue to develop this person and allow them to grow. Alona, our now VP of operations, our highest ranked person at the company, she had never managed someone before joining the company. And now she's been responsible for recruiting almost half the team. She's built up the largest team inside of AppSumo. And that was a multi-year process of coaching her up and teaching her management principles. And it's really about like personal development for those individuals to allow them to become the leaders that in your mind, you have the potential for. Like even when Beard Brand launched, you knew the potential it had as a brand. And so you need to see the people that you're hiring as the potential and seeing that potential in them and being able to work with them on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, because as you're growing out your leadership team, I mean, now she's managing one of the largest parts of AppSumo, and that is only a result of her having worked at AppSumo for 4 years and being able to develop and improve over time.
I want to talk about compensation plans, because you guys are pretty aggressive. We're here in Austin, Texas. You're competing against Facebook, against Google, like the big players. Like, how do you make AppSumo as competitive of a space as some of these, the largest companies in the world?
You never will.
You never will.
Never will. I mean, if you're competing on just dollars for dollars, you're always going to lose. And I think that's a losing game, because not only do they have highly liquid equity that, you can immediately sell. They're always going to have deeper pockets. And those are things that you just quite frankly can't compete on. What you can compete on is the intangibles. And so that's number one is the mission. Is like for us, we believe in helping the underdogs and helping the next generation of entrepreneurs. And almost everyone at the company, they run a side hustle. They believe in the future of entrepreneurship, and they would much rather help the next generation of entrepreneurs build a sustainable and successful business than help Zuckerberg launch another Facebook ad click.
Yeah.
And so that's number one, is them believing the mission. Number two is the intangibles of us supporting them with their side hustles. And so we'll do like side hustle Saturdays. We'll do events where we're like we'll do office hours with Noah, for instance, and help them work and build on their side hustles. These are things that Facebook just can't support because it's not built into their ethos.
Yeah.
And then the last is the ability to pitch like, hey, I mean, I worked at a large tech company. I worked at Microsoft. You'd be lucky if anything you did in the course of 4 years had any impact on Microsoft's bottom line. Whereas that's literally every single day at AppSumo, you're able to move the needle, and your ideas not only are going to get heard, but they're actually going to get implemented, and it's going to be customer facing. For an engineer, I mean, some engineers at Microsoft will be working on code for 4 years and they'll never see the light of day. Same with Facebook, same with a lot of these companies. You'll have one person working on one button on menu 3 buried in page 10. It's like, that's just soul sucking work.
Right.
Come here and you'll be able to have impactful work that's going to challenge you and actually be able to help you develop your entrepreneurial skills. And so when you're competing on those intangibles, rather than the dollars, because if you're only competing on dollars, you're only going to hire mercenaries and they're just going to leave you for the next highest paycheck. But if you're hiring people that believe in your mission, that want to grow their own business, that believe in AppSumo's core, I mean, that's the reason we have people that have been with the company for 4, 5, 6 years. We have one engineer who's been with us 9 years from MIT, Eric. I mean, he's absolutely phenomenal. He's literally getting poached by Facebook every single day. He refuses to leave because he believes in the mission. And I think the more that you can focus on those intangibles, the more loyalty you're going to be able to build into your team.
Yeah. I think one of the things that was very interesting about what you're talking about is that connection to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Now, I assume that was very strategic because not every company is going to be like, oh yeah, do a side hustle and,
right.
Work on your other time. And,
right.
You almost feel like a lot of leaders have insecurities where they'd be afraid that everyone has a successful business and they go off and they leave, Talk a little bit more about like making that one of your core values when it comes to culture in your organization.
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. It's very unique to AppSumo, like we are for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And so for us, that made sense, and I think like as part of the recruiting process, I would be pointing to some of the alumni that have come through AppSumo and been like, hey, look, they're now running very successful businesses. And that was a point of pride for us, is like, hey, like come to AppSumo. I mean, the way I pitched it was like, this is a boot camp for entrepreneurship. It's like, you come here, you're going to be able to see 1,000 companies launched. Some will be very successful, some will not. You'll be able to see, you have a watchtower view of the industry. You'll be able to develop the skills of writing copy, looking at marketing. You're essentially playing CEO of 1,000 different companies. And once you leave, you'll have the skill set needed in order to grow and start your business. And so for us, that was very unique to us, and we were able to double down on that. But I think every founder should be constantly analyzing, like, what is unique about my business that I'm able to double down on? What could I sell? Like, who are the type of people that would thrive working for this type of company? And what are the intangible things that we could give them in order to help them choose us over anyone else and make it an absolute no-brainer? You're essentially, when you're less than 50 people, you're essentially building a tribe. It's really more of a team than it is a company. Mm-hmm. And like the team needs to have that ethos, something that's a shared common knowledge. I'm sure you feel that yourself with your team. And the more that you can really codify that, like, what are our core values? What do we stand for? What do we believe in? And like, what are the aspirations, not just in the company, but personally and like outside of the company that you can support? I think that's really where you start to separate yourself from the competition.
Yeah. You talked about having insight into how all these other companies are doing. What is your take on the future of e-commerce and the direction that e-commerce may go, and the players in the space, or any kind of like, strategies or visions? Obviously, no one can predict the future, but
right.
I'd be interested to kind of hear your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, e-commerce is a really interesting space. I mean, as obviously, like with the rise of Shopify and Facebook ads, it became really easy to like get a store off the ground and acquire customers really rapidly. And I think we are starting to see both of those starting to lose some of their steam. And it's become, I would argue, e-commerce is now harder than it's ever been before, because it's really difficult to acquire new customers, and it's really difficult to differentiate store from everyone else. And so I think this really has to go back to the first three core principles: your person, the product, and the promotion. And if you want to survive in e-commerce, I think in 2022 and beyond, getting crystal clear on who are you serving and being able to say no to everyone else, I think is really important. For AppSumo, we are a marketplace now, but when I took over, we were an e-commerce store, and we got crystal clear on who we were serving. Because when I took over in AppSumo, we were doing everything under the sun. We were doing courses, we were doing ebooks, we were doing templates, fonts, WordPress themes. And when we analyzed our product mix, we're like, well, what's performing really well? And what was performing really well, almost 10x to all the other product lines, was software, particularly lifetime software deals. And we dug deeper and we're like, well, why is that performing so well? And it was because of this one cohort of customer. We called him Marketing Agency Matt. And Marketing Agency Matt is running a 7-figure marketing agency. They are buying AppSumo software and they're packaging it as part of their offering to their clients. And they're going, hey, we're going to be able to take care of your SEO. We're going to take care of your social media, all for this one fee. And so while their costs stay fixed, their fees to their clients can rise. And we were able to double down on that client, on Marketing Agency Matt. And just by doing that, our customer lifetime value tripled. I mean, when your customer lifetime value triples, your business triples. And so that's number one for e-commerce to survive, is getting crystal clear on who you're serving. And then number two is creating that irresistible offer, which is that product. For us, it was lifetime deals in software. We used to do one a quarter. It got to the point where we were doing one a week. And that, just absolutely ballooned the business, because not only were Marketing Agency Matts finding what they were looking for, but they were referring us to all of their friends and they were talking about us and raving. And then the last one is promotion. And as we've seen, like the cost of customer acquisition has never been higher. If you can't own your customer acquisition strategy, I think you're dead in the water. I think it's important for you to really have a strong, you have an incredible content marketing strategy. I think that's something that you have a lot of control over. I think relying on Facebook's marketplace, the Facebook ad click, and their ability to change the algorithm every week, I think that's a great way to supplement your marketing strategy. But if you're relying on that and you're not bringing that in-house, I think that's an area where you're always going to be stressed out about what is Zuckerberg doing this week.
Yeah. When we grabbed a burger at Easy Tiger a number of months ago, you told me about the 3 levers to focus on. And I feel like as an entrepreneur, you get overwhelmed and bombarded with all the options out there.
Right.
But the way you phrased these 3 levers, which were essentially your new customer acquisition.
Yep.
And then you have your repeat rate.
That's right.
And then you have your AOV.
That's right.
And like those, like if we're doing a Venn diagram or whatever, like you bring those 3 together, and in the middle is just like, the rocket fuel.
Right.
To explode your business. Because if you improve each by 20%.
Yeah. You've almost doubled the business.
Yeah.
100%.
Are those like key performance indicators within your company?
Absolutely.
And like who's taking ownership of that, or how do you divvy that up?
Yeah. So let's unpack those 3 levers. So if you actually look at your annual revenue is just a component of the total number of customers, their average order value, and their repurchase rate, right? And so if you just focus on those 3 numbers in terms of your growth and figuring out which of those 3 levers am I going to focus on, you will directly impact your overall revenue. And so, yes, we have one person that's responsible for each of those metrics internally. They are the key KPIs. One person's going out and after new customers and managing our overall active customer number. And we track that on both a monthly and an annual basis. Then we have AOV, and we can unpack that. It's a little more advanced, but like AOV can sometimes be a misnomer, but it's a good proxy for the health of your business and whether or not you're providing more and more value to your customers over time. And so we have one person focused on average order value. And then the last one is the repurchase rate. And so that's customer retention. Are people finding the products that you are selling to be awesome to the point where they can't wait to come back and purchase more? And if you really look at it, like the 3 of those together allow you to understand what is your customer lifetime value? Are you driving more higher quality customers? Those 3 levers have a direct impact on your revenue. And so for us at AppSumo, when we focused on repurchase rate, for instance, this goes back to us doubling down on lifetime deals. When we were bringing lifetime deals from being once a quarter to then once a week, there was a lot more opportunity for the Marketing Agency Matts of the world to come to AppSumo and purchase multiple times because we were making their offering more valuable. And so we saw a direct result of tripling of our customer lifetime value, and it had a direct impact on our revenue.
I'll see this with a lot of entrepreneurs. or see them talk about this, and they'll be like, well, I sell a product that people only buy once. You know, they'll sell wedding rings.
Yeah.
Or I've had these guests on the show before, or
Yeah.
Murphy beds.
Right.
You know, how do you talk to them about that repeat purchase rate and how important, like, because to me, in my perspective, it's like, well, if you want higher repeat purchase rates
Yep.
for a Murphy bed, you also sell pillows and sheets and
Mhm.
the accessories that they would need over time, or
Right.
fabric cleaner or whatever.
Right.
What would be your guidance or your kind of pep talk to them
Yeah.
to make it worth a damn?
I hope you're not trying to increase repurchase rate for wedding rings.
Yeah, I know, right?
So it's a really important distinction. Analyze those three levers and go, you know what? My business has a natural inclination to have a low repurchase rate, but my AOV can go up. To your point, you can do those add-ons, right? If I'm selling a mattress, I mean, I could be selling sheets, I could be selling pillows, I could be selling the mattress protector. I mean, I could be selling the frame. There is so much more to increase that average order value. And so you don't need to necessarily double your repurchase rate. What you could do is double the average order value. And now you've directly impacted your revenue. Additionally, in fact, you know, Villarreal Jewelers here in Austin is where I purchased my wedding ring. I have sent him 4 different people of my friends, and they go to him and they're buying all of their wedding rings from him. And so from this one person, by providing such an incredible experience with myself, I mean, essentially my repurchase rate is 4x. I sent to my brother, I sent to my best friend, and I have people flying in just to go see him because of how such an incredible job he did with my engagement ring for my wife. And so that'll directly impact the first number, which is the number of total customers. So that's your referral rate. And so while you may not be able to influence your repurchase rate depending on your business, you can 100% impact your average order value and your number of total customers by really ensuring that your customers have an incredible experience together.
I'm glad you said that, because I just did a tweet a couple days ago where I talked about, it's kind of a morbid analogy, but like car wrecks. When people think of car wrecks, they're thinking, or car accidents, they're thinking about the safety of the car and the wreck.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like to think about, you know, what about the car that avoids the wreck?
Right.
That never gets in the wreck. It
Yeah.
doesn't have that data. So there's elements to safety that don't really fit the box. And then, you know, the analogy to marketing was, you know, marketers think about like conversion rates and ads, but there's the kind of unseen things that are great, like great customer service, great products.
Right.
And those are kind of like the brand elements as well that are the things that you need to be focusing on. In addition, I mean, you need to do both, just like a car needs to be safe in a wreck, but also avoid wrecks.
Right.
I think a e-commerce business needs to kind of do both, focus on the ads, the conversion rate, but also the products. You can't have, what they say, lipstick on a turd.
That's right. That's right.
On a pig.
And the way you'll know if your brand, you'll start to see more direct traffic coming through Google Analytics. You're going to see a lot more direct searches in Google. There's a lot more brand recognition. And if you start to see that uptick where people are directly searching for your brand, it's because they're finding it out from a friend. They're finding out from a piece of content. They're coming back later. And it's clear you're seeing an uptick in your brand marketing having an impact on your overall marketing.
Yeah. So AppSumo,
Yes.
that's a chapter
It is.
in your life
It's a
that's being
beautiful one.
wrapped up. Yep. What are you doing now?
Yeah, I mean, the plan was to just like go out and go golfing and enjoy myself for a little bit.
You like golfing? More like shooting, huh?
I like both, you know. I mean, both are trying to get like a small thing into a small hole, right? Don't read too far into that. So yeah, I mean, that was the plan, was to go and enjoy myself and do that. But I had so many people coming out and reach out to me like, hey, you know, would you be interested in joining as CEO of our business? And I wasn't ready to get back in the saddle yet. And they're like, well, do you mind coaching up our COO or do you mind coaching up our CEO? And I'm like, well, you know, this is something that I actually wished I had when I was, you know, in the trenches. And like, I found myself like reading all these books and going to all these conferences and never really finding the exact, I was always like having to make the mistakes, the painful mistakes. And it was like a lot of stressful, sleepless nights trying to grow the business. And I was like, I wish I had this like quote unquote person that I could just chat with that's already gone through this process. And I'm like, well, let me do it for one friend. And that one friend ended up being like, well, can you do it for this other person? And like, it got to the point where like, I was like now doing a little bit more advisory work for a handful of companies and helping them sort of navigate the process from 7 to 8 and hopefully eventually to 9 figures.
Yeah.
And I've actually found that work to be really rewarding. I found it an opportunity for me to still stay close to business while not actually being in the driver's seat. Because as you're well aware, it's a very taxing full-time, more than full-time job, but it allows me to sort of help the next generation of entrepreneurs break into 8-9 figures and really make that transition from being a product-led founder into a people development CEO.
So are most of your clients, are they owners who they themselves want to become the CEO, or helping owners identify the talent and coach up the talent to become CEOs and kind of push them out, or both?
It's both. I mean, I think that's the first question that I ask them is like, do you want to become this? Because like you have to reinvent yourself as a CEO. It's like, instead of you rolling up the sleeves and doing the work yourself, you are doing the work through people. You know, you are developing the people and getting them to that next level. And quite frankly, a lot of founders just don't want to do that. And I think that's a tough decision to make, right? They like to be closer to the product. They like rolling up their sleeves and they like doing the work themselves. And so step one is asking yourself, are you interested in becoming that type of CEO? And if yes, then yeah, we'll work together to sort of rewire the brain, because it's a hard habit to kick, to just be like, oh, just move over. I'm going to do it. I can do it better myself.
Yeah.
So that's step one. And then if they didn't, then yeah, it's like maybe there's a high potential person inside of the company that we will help train up and hopefully get more and more work off of the founder's plate and onto this, let's say COO, for instance, or actually go out and help them find the second in command, which I'm doing with a handful of companies.
One other thing I wanted to ask you or get your feedback on is recently Jack Dorsey of Twitter stepped down. And he was replaced by a new CEO. I don't know the CEO's name off the top of my head, but I saw it come across my Twitter feed. The new CEO just had a baby. Congratulations.
Yes.
And he's taking a paternity leave of like 3 months or something like that. It's an extended paternity leave.
Yep.
And I feel like in American culture, there is this expectation that CEOs work like dogs all the time. You know, they're always thinking about the business. What are kind of your thought process on that leadership and how much energy, time, work should go into a business from a CEO? Is it realistic to expect, you know, only 40 hours of work, or should you kind of expect them to always be on the company's dime for?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in your life cycle as a CEO. You know, do you have an established leadership team for every part of your business where you are confident that if there is a fire drill and customer support, for instance, that you have the leadership in place to be able to handle it? I mean, we would have a partner, for instance, at AppSumo, we'd have a partner, let's say, sell to just, you know, sell the business. And we'd have all the customers asking, well, what's happening to my lifetime deal? And it would require me, you know, in the hotel in Colombia, opening up the laptop, reaching out to the acquiring company. Hey, just confirming you're going to honor these lifetime deals and going through this process, showing the contracts. And it would have to be the CEO. It'd have to be me making sure that all of our customers were taken care of. Well, that's because I did that the first time, right? You build out an SOP, you build out a checklist, and you hopefully be like, if this ever happens again, here is the process. We reach out to our customers, letting them know we're looking into it. We reach out to the acquiring company, we reach out to the old CEO. We make sure that everything is nailed. We update the communication, make sure that our customers are taken care of, and then email anyone that purchased the deal and let them know. And so while you may have to do everything yourself the first time, hopefully by the time you have an entire leadership team, like now we have Candace. I mean, this happens every quarter. Candace is already on top of it. She's making sure that our customers are taken care of. And I no longer need to open up my laptop to make sure that our customers are being handled, because we've got the leadership team in place that's able to take care of that. And so I think that if you are early on in your career as CEO, you don't have the leadership team in place, you don't have the processes, you don't have the SOPs, you should expect the job to be hard. It is not easy. I mean, there's a reason why it is the most coveted position in business. I mean, it's the pinnacle for a reason. It's very difficult. I mean, expect to be putting in the hours, and you're going to expect to be developing your team. And I mean, you're paid to deal with the stress. Yeah. That's your job.
It's the big leagues.
It is the big leagues. And you're training.
Like, do you think Tom Brady is putting 2 hours a day into being a quarterback?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I mean, you are training at high altitude. And I mean, as anyone that's, you know, been an alpinist, as you get up to higher altitude, you either get altitude sickness and have to come back down, or you've adjusted and pushed forward. And I think in the beginning stages, as you're building out your leadership team, you're building out the processes, you're building out your plan for the business, you're giving more clarity and guardrails to the team. You can slowly start to step away from the day-to-day, but you should never step away from the long-term, because the faster you're growing, I mean, to me, like, long-term planning is kind of like the headlights on your car. Like, if you're going 200 miles an hour, you need high beams. Right. And at that point, you become the high beams. And then the further down the road you can share with your company, be like, this is the direction we're going. Here's how we're getting there. There's a curve coming up ahead. Be mindful of it well in advance. The less motion sickness your team will have as they go through that process.
Yeah. Where can people hire you? Where can they find you?
Twitter would probably be the easiest way. Twitter.com/Ayman Al-Abdullah. We'll probably put a link in the show notes.
Yep.
That'd be the easiest way to find. My DMs are open. Feel free to hit me up. I have a Notion homepage template. If anyone wants to just grab it, it's already pinned on my homepage.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go. Go to Twitter and see our tweets. Amen. Thanks for coming by again. This has been a great show. I always learn copious amounts of things.
Eric is awesome.
And get inspired. So hopefully our listeners were able to enjoy this as much as I did.
Thank you, sir. It was awesome being back, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
And keep on growing.